All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, whatever you're joining me from in the world. My name is Laura Belmain. Welcome to the Secure Software Coffee Club. All right, what's the deal? Because it's our first time around. Well, no coffee, no coffee. Oh, no, don't be silly. One coffee, no slides. That's more important. And secure software. Let me just pull up the screen and let's get on with it. Today's session, today's chat. And the topic we're going to get into is where do tools and gates fit with the agentic development lifecycle? Oof, that's a big one to tackle on a beautiful day like this, but let's get into it. All right, let me give a bit of context. Why on earth am I sat here in my literal spare hobby room with a very fetching kerru, that's a wood pigeon mug, having a chat with you today? Why haven't I just given you a glossy, beautiful video that I could do? You know, I have all the equipment for it. You know why? Because we are living in the age of AI. And I don't know about you, but my feed is full, absolutely full of perfect videos that have all been AI generated. And you know what? I think we're missing something in that process. We're missing the human connection, the raw energy of thinking through a problem and sharing it with someone. So I guess there'll probably be no one here with me today, but I'm going to be here every week. I'm going to have my cup of coffee or other beverage of choice, and I'm going to get into a topic specifically on secure software. And the whole aim of this is to bring us together around the idea that we don't know yet. Now is not the time for glossy videos. Now is not the time for us to say the future is here and we got it covered. The whole aim of this is to understand the topic and think it through together. So I'm genuinely inviting you to follow me, follow Ninja, the company I work for, to bring your drink along, to have a chat, to ask your questions, have your feelings and opinions. I'm also completely open to having guests join me here. So if you want to be on the screen with me, having a cup of coffee and a chat, please drop me a message. If you can recommend somebody who should be here having a chat about something cool or emerging, let's do that. But let's get into today's topic and why I even want to talk about it. So I spend a lot of time with dev teams, both the teams that I run as Chief Product Officer here at Ninja and the teams I run at SafeStack, but also with customers all around the world. So with organizations who are building cool technology, and it looks different everywhere. I'm really gloriously lucky in the fact that I've been able to work across finance and insurance and e-commerce and sports and wearable technologies that want to change the world. Haven't done space yet, so if there's a space company watching, like, say hi. I'd love to have a chat and nerd out, because space security, I mean, there's literally that's the final frontier, right? Showed my nerd. Um, and what I've noticed from all of this experience, as wonderful as it is that the way we develop software migrates, it changes over time. But now more than ever is that process changing. So back in the day, you'll see behind me, there's like a book cover on the wall. Back in the day, 2017, almost 10 years ago, when Agile application security was being written, we were very much into the shift left movement. DevSecOps was in its infancy. We were starting to put gates in things. And the idea of putting security through your lifecycle became, instead of doing pen testing at the end, which was currently the current way of doing it, we would gates and checks into the process. And we would enable our engineers to do things as we went. And it's worked great. I have no problem with the fact we have gates and tooling, but what I am spotting is we are on another evolutionary shift when it comes to software development. And this is twofold. Firstly, coding assistance, so using copilots, is now pretty much table stakes for dev teams. There are very few organizations I've met in the last year that are not at least doing some part of AI-enabled development, and those who aren't doing it are really suffering from the productivity, or at least the perceived productivity changes that they are not benefiting from. So what this means, however, is agentic development changes things dramatically. So if we historically did our software development lifecycle as, design and refinement, and then implementation, testing, onwards through deployment and maintenance. Cool. There are elements of this process now that we are not as actively involved in. A lot of the work has shifted from the implementation stage and the testing stage, even deployment in some cases, but I'll get back to that, to earlier in the life cycle, or the way that we're interacting at this stage of the life cycle has shifted. So where we might be actually writing code and writing everything from scratch ourselves, I mean, not everything from scratch because we're not insane, but doing, the vast majority of the syntactic work ourselves, we're not anymore. We might work with a co-pilot and a set of guidelines and guardrails and templates, and we might say, hey, this is my intention, this is my use case, and we might ask the AI to do the reasoning and suggest the change. We, in essence, have become the reviewers and arbiters of enthusiastic junior coders' work. I'm being a bit tongue-in-cheek with the junior coder, and somebody's going to have feelings at me about, the quality of AI coding. We'll come back to that later. It's fine. Look, coffee, you should do that too. Ooh, too hot. Yeah, definitely not AI, because AI doesn't burn its tongue on coffee. All right, carrying on. So our role has changed from less of a doer and more of a reviewer. That's okay. What has also changed is the scope and size of the changes we make in one go. Now, when you're just operating on your own as an engineer, there's a fixed amount you can process in your brain at once. Even if you are like a 10x engineer, I don't know we even use that phrase anymore, but if you are, the top of the line engineer, there's only so much context and how much change you can process at once. And we have a lot of hygiene rules around, pull request size or change size. It's why we score our stories before they go in so that we're not trying to take on the entire universe when we just need to do one small change. I think we're all familiar with the idea that lots of small changes make a big change in the end. Well, in agentic world, that it doesn't work quite the same way. It's highly unlikely that folks are doing per story basis. They might actually do a bunch of stories close to what we might consider an epic's work in one go, and that comes out the other end. Now, how does this all change the way we use tools and gates in our life cycle? Well, the first question that I've been really thinking about in this is where we put the gates, where we put the tools. So let's just be really explicit with this. I don't want to be hand wavy about, oh, there are tools and gates and you should think about them. Let's talk about some specific gates and tools. So if I work from the end of the life cycle backwards, it'll make sense. Believe me. At the end of the life cycle, our last stop before we maintain the thing is deployment. And the checks that we tend to do there are our, regression testing, check the deployment worked, or, if not, rolling it back. This is also the point where we might have our annual or programized penetration testing or external audit or review. Yes, there are some ways of doing Delta penetration testing through the life cycle, but on the whole, if I'm honest, we're still in the world where penetration testing on as a standalone expert driven or external business line is an end of the pipeline, or it's not in line with the frequency that we're developing code. We move back from that and we talk about when code comes and we say, hey, look, we have done a pull request, this set of changes is done, you should review it now. And we talk about the tooling we have here. So we have secret scanners, we have our SAST and DAST tools are in the mix, so our security testing tools essentially. And what these are doing are looking at our code base, looking at the changes we've just made and saying, hey, look, I see that this syntax here might lead to this vulnerability, or hey, I see that you've done this and this could make you vulnerable in X way. That is the gate we typically put in at this stage. And there's probably still an argument for the gate being there, but I've got some questions about whether we are using the right tools anymore. Let me kind of think aloud on this. And this is where I want your opinions and feedback. Historically, we have chosen the best-in-class tooling we could afford as those testing gates because we can't make a human do this process. We know it's really important, and so we invest. So you might have a standalone SaaS tool, and there's many out there. I'm not going to list vendor names at you because it changes like days of the week. But this is your SNCs and your SEMGREPs and your blah blah. You've got one there. Now, theoretically, if we're talking about, the current age of AI or agentic development support, the logic and functionality that is contained in those tooling can be achieved inside our agents. Now, we can see this in action with the ongoing work with Mythos and subsequent models that are being tested at the moment. Their ability to reason and to evaluate code from a security perspective is far in and above what we've been able to do with automated tools before. Now, this kind of puts us into this world of, do you still need to buy these tools anymore if you have invested or if you are investing in agentic development? And I think I'm very torn on this. I think teams are going to go and they're going to go both ways on this. Let me just sort of break down my thinking on it. The argument for not having them anymore, using our own agents. Now, there's twofold for this that makes it quite appealing. Firstly, you already have the agents, you're already paying for them. Now, I'm not even going to get into agentic pricing. That is a rant for another day, and that's going to need a lot more than just one coffee. But theoretically, if you've invested in your licensing and your tokens and things for AI and you have the right accesses and connections set up, then there is enough prior art out there now to set up a rudimentary SaaS system that automatically runs on triggers from your pipeline. That is 100% feasible, and I would imagine already happening in a number of organizations. The same way that we're seeing the modernization in automated software and functional testing is going the same direction. Is it as nuanced as a human who has lots of domain experience doing it? Probably not, but it means you can scale it and do it every time that you push code. Well, the benefit of this is if, let's say you're using Claude arbitrarily, other AI agents do exist, and please don't take this as a commercial endorsement, but if you're using Claude is doing the bulk of the writing of code, then logically it's in the same ecosystem for you to, as part of that development flow, introduce almost continual checks for every bit of code that Claude is producing with your assistants to do SaaS-like activities, which is interesting. And it brings us into the second half of this and why I think there's probably still a place there, but I think this will change very rapidly with time. This area, the use of SaaS tools, the use of gates in our life cycle, is going to highlight very rapidly the gap between our compliance regimes and what regulation says we should be doing in software development and what software development is actually doing day to day. Let me explain. If you look at PCI DSS, for example, there's an entire section 6, I think last time I checked, of how to do secure software. And it says, hey, look, we care about some things. If you do ISO, there's an entire section on how you develop and acquire software. And it has some strongly held opinions on what that looks like, what good looks like. And many of these things now include specific references to you should have a SaaS tool in your deployment lifecycle. You should do this form of testing. I think for now, the strongest thing that's going to be holding on to SaaS tools and in their current commercial format in our pipelines is the fact that our audit teams and our compliance regimes haven't quite caught up with how this might look in an agentic world. And that means we have an opportunity right now to still invest in these SaaS tools, still use them, but we need to change the focus slightly. We need to see them not so much as the only way to achieve finding vulnerabilities in our code. I genuinely do not believe that is true. But we can see them as an efficiency tool for creating the evidence that we need to give comfort to third parties that we're doing this in a way that they understand. Now, I can hear myself saying this out loud, and like past Laura is like really upset with this. Like past Laura had feelings and opinions that would have fundamentally disagreed with this. But is that the world we live in right now, where actually the thing we need to do, the thing that we're considering isn't just the security outcomes of the software we're building, but it's also how quickly and easily can we communicate that we do care about these things to an audience who are non-technical, who are not operating at the same speed and cadence with the same tooling as us. And some of these tools that we invest in historically will persist until the point where compliance and standards community reach the same understanding as our software development community and can interact with their tools in the same way. Now, if you are a SaaS vendor and you happen to stumble on this, hello, nice to meet you. I think this is probably a really interesting time for you. As like, I'm a chief product officer. My job is to do the product vision and steer the ship when it comes to what we build for the future of security awareness and secure development in terms of education and assistance. But it's an interesting time to be in product because we're looking forward into this space and saying, well, what do we do now? What do we need to do in the short term? What to do in the long term? And if you're in a SaaS vendor right now, I imagine those conversations are heavily agentic, and they are very much aware of the need to be in with the agentic development as it's happening rather than separate to it. And the risk of not doing that is huge. So if we don't cross this gap between SaaS tools and, I don't know what that is, SaaS tools and the rest of the development world, we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back to a time where security was a separate thing to development, which arguably we could say it still is in a way, but anyway, it's going to feel like it's separate to development, and those tools are only run by a security team to meet compliance requirements. And I think if we get to that stage, we failed. All of us have failed. This is a fascinating time, really is fascinating. Now, that's the co-pilot side of the world. So, you know, why we probably still need them, these SaaS tools, these gates right now. But I think it's going to change. And the other side of why I think these SaaS tools and things are going to be incredibly difficult for us to keep long term, no disrespect intended to anyone who builds these for a living, like this is a really wild time for all of us in product. Think about the democratization. Oh, that was a hard word. Oh, democratization. AI doesn't stumble like that. We're making it so that everyone can build software. Now, historically, we've always said this, like anyone can build code, here, do my boot camp and class and whatnot. But actually, I think we mean it now. There are people in my community, probably in your community too, who they don't consider it software development, but they know if they ask AI and they need an app to help track the niche version of golf they play with their friends on a Tuesday afternoon, that AI will help them build something that to them looks convincingly like a web application that they will happily use with their friends. While there's a security side of me that is terrified by this, actually, I think it's pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool that anyone who has an idea may be able to build something now. But that means all of our controls, all of our processes, all of our frameworks are about to fail all at the same time. Do you know why? Because if you're a citizen engineer, let's call them that. You could call them a shadow builder. That's a bit more dramatic. But let's say citizen engineer at this point. You've got no formal background in software development, but you're building stuff with your new friend Claude or your new friend Gemini or whatever. You don't have a deployment pipeline. You probably don't even know what a version control system is yet. You're probably going to ask the the AI agent to help you make these decisions if you even know what questions to ask. So our future is there's a tidal shift and it's splitting in two. The traditional engineering community, we have the skills and knowledge to know what we need to do and to build these things ourselves into our workflows using agentic tools. For the citizen engineer, this is going to be wild because the wrong answer right now would be to say they shouldn't be building, that we should bring it into the software teams and control that. We've tried this before, team. We've tried this. We've tried to restrict IT teams and say only the IT team can do things. How well did that go? How many shadow IT teams did we have by the end of like the 2000s? It's a huge problem. It's still a huge problem now. We can't stop it. You're not going to be able to stop people from being creative and solving problems. People are like water. And so we've got to find ways to get the same functionality that we use in our SaaS tooling and in our gates into any part of our organization that develops software, but without the people that we're helping, the citizen engineers, from having the background and understanding of why this matters. That's really hard. If anyone is asking you in your organization, what is the future of secure development? The future of secure development is not in syntax. It is not in the specific language or code you write in. In fact, those decisions are going to become arbitrary. Told you hot opinions in this today, because it's not going to matter, because we're not going to be the ones doing the building and maintaining, not all of us anyway. What is really going to matter is how we make design, user experience, design patterns for security, for example, how we make these de facto so that the AI, when asked, doesn't even need somebody to say, remember about security, that's already just the way we do things. We need this to be so transparent that we actually forget that security needs to exist, because that's secure by design and secure by default. It is just built in to the assistants that are building software with us. I realize everything I'm saying is pretty wild at this time in the morning for me in particular, but I think this is the most fascinating time to be thinking about this. If you are the type of person and you have a pipeline with SaaS tools and gates in it right now, don't throw it away. That's not what we're saying today. Use them, invest in those tools, make the most of them. Make sure they're tuned and you've got the reporting right. But remember that there is going to be a time very, very soon where the real purpose for those stops being helping your engineers, because they could do that themselves with their agents. You just need a bit of time and investment to make that happen. The real purpose of those tools is going to be in communication and making sure that the people around us who are not as technical can still get the assurance that what we're doing is the right thing and that it considers security at every stage. And while you're doing all of that, I want you to find your own way to come to terms with and embrace the citizen engineer, because we are at the start of a very incredibly exciting period, and we are going to invent more software and more solutions than the world has ever seen in the shortest period of time. And that is going to create an entire ecosystem of amazing things, but a whole lot of challenges. And remember, alongside all of this, as well as our citizen engineers building, we're going to have citizen attackers who are using exactly the same tool to opportunistically see what they can do in the world to meet their objectives. Maybe that's an entire conversation on its own, right? Whew, pretty good coffee chat this morning, team. Lots to dig into there. I'd love to see you in the comments. What tooling are you using right now? Are you going to be replacing it in the next few years? Are you building your own now? What's your reason for keeping it? What's your reason for getting rid of it? Have you got citizen engineers in your organization? Are you trying to stop them? Or are you encouraging them? I'd love to know. I'd love for us to build a community around this. Us and our cups of coffee and our terrible office environments that, hey ho, let's connect. Let's just be people solving a really big problem together in a world that's changing quicker than any of us know. Because I think it's going to be a wild ride. And personally, I wouldn't be anywhere else right now. Have a wonderful rest of your day, whatever that looks like. And let's talk again soon. See you next week.